Our next speaker is Dr. Andrew Green from the University of California, Berkeley Career Center. His talk is entitled, Translating Your CV into an Effective Resume in the Life Sciences.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. My name is Andrew Green, and for the last 18 years, I've worked with graduate students, PhDs, and postdocs at UC Berkeley as one of two PhD advisors at the Career Center. And because I come from Berkeley, I need to start my time with a little bit of therapy. Okay? So if you have a space in front of you, maybe you want to lean back, close your eyes, and we're going to do a little free association. Okay? So if I sent your resume to 20 hiring managers in industry, and they look at the first substantive item and they see Ph.D., University of Washington, or postdoc, University of California, Berkeley, what terms, what qualities are they going to free associate with that attribute? What do you think? Nothing? Hippie. Huh? Smart. Achievement. Problem solver. Okay? Great. That is earning a PhD from a top research university, doing a postdoc, continuing on your research. These generate very positive associations on the basis of those accomplishments. But let me ask you this. How often do you think those hiring managers are going to look at that information and think, ooh, this is someone who plays well with others? This is someone with great communication skills because they're a PhD from Berkeley. Here's someone with great leadership skills. Or here's one of the most socially graceful people I'm ever likely to meet. I'm sure this is just Berkeley. I have a biased sample. Okay. So the problem is that it's not enough that you're a great, accomplished scientist, especially when you're talking about making a transition from academic science into positions whether in business, government, or the nonprofit sector. Okay. In academia, as a PI, you are your own boss. And you're really left by yourself to run your research group as long as you're productive. But it's very rare that work outside of academia is done in isolation. And so if I'm on a hiring committee at Genentech, I need to see evidence that you're someone who actually does play well with others, or I'm not likely to be willing to hire you. I had a presentation once with a senior vice president in HR from Genentech. And the most interesting thing he had to say to the audience of PhDs was 85% of the time when we hire at the PhD level and it doesn't work, it has nothing to do with their skills, it has all to do with fit. And so when I talked to a postdoc recently who had a full day of interviews as a final round at Genentech, she had 13 interviews. She did not have a single technical question. Because by the time they brought her to their site for a final round of interviews, they were satisfied about her science. What they needed to know was whether or not she could function effectively in their management style and their organizational culture. Okay. You all have CVs. But if they're similar to the CVs that I see, almost none of them showcase leadership, management, collaboration skills. And when I say this to my students and postdocs, they go, oh, but I have co-authored papers. Doesn't that show collaboration? No. Half the time you've never even had a single face-to-face meeting with people you're co-authored with. So it doesn't matter what you have done. It doesn't matter that, in fact, you initiate these great collaborations, that you served as project manager. If these skills and experiences are not reflected in the written documents that are all I have as a potential hiring manager, it's the sole basis I have to judge you and determine, do I want to bring you in for an interview? Your CV, which is largely used for academic jobs where I'm hiring you as a PI, a leader, All I really care about is your output. Show me you've been productive in terms of the quality of your degrees and other academic experiences, honors awards, publications, bringing in money. Okay? But when you're applying to business, government, nonprofit, there you need a resume. 2 pages at the most. And do not assume I will read the second page if I don't see information of value to me on that first page. So you need to be much more selective. Your resume is not so much about where you've been, so much as what do you have the capability of doing. That is both your bench skills, but it is also your soft skills and relevant experience. Your resume is not your biography. Most of the resumes that are first brought to me, they're written from the inside out. Here are all the things I've done, all the places I've been. I hope you read through it carefully and draw appropriate inferences. How likely are you going to do that? No. So it's up to you to decide for this given job, for this given audience, what is the mental checklist that someone like David brings to the assessment process? What's that A, B, and C I'm looking for? So I don't have to worry about seeing D, E, and F. Show me A, show me B, show me C. When I meet with a life science Ph.D. who's looking to make this transition to industry, and they hand me a resume, the first question I ask is, if I'm going to hire you, am I going to hire you because you spent the last 5 years working on this cell line, this protein, whatever? That is, if you look to the left, is there a lot of overlap between the substantive nature of the science you've done and what you would do for me? And the answer, about 85%, is no, I'm never going to work on that cell line, that protein again. Maybe 5% it's both, but most of the time it's the skills, capabilities, software packages developed in context A that are transferable to context B that represent your source of value. And for me to be willing to bring you in, I need to understand, because since I don't live in your substantive realm, I can't look at the titles of your publications and abstract from it. Oh, she's really good at flow cytometry. She obviously has project management skills. And she has someone who's be able to communicate to non-experts in her area. If those are the content of my A, B, and C, then you need to give me a document that looks very different from your CV. And this isn't just me, it's not even just the panel. If you look at PhD job ads, as a member of the R&D biochem team, excellent interpersonal skills. That is not a quality that most hiring managers will assume looking at the top of your resume and going, oh, he's a PhD from Berkeley. Train and onboard other team members. These are part and parcel of any job above entry level in the life sciences. Willingness and ability to work effectively with others, hire, develop, lead high-performing teams. The omnibus statement in a highlights of qualification or in your cover letter, able to work independently but good team player, that's not enough. Okay? That's telling me. What you need to do is show me. Okay? So what that means is you have to make clear your sources of value. Okay? And that's more than a list of your scientific accomplishments. If we had more time, there's an exercise which is the second to last sheet in your packet where it kind of lays out, okay, the first 3 bullets up here, use Monte Carlo simulations, programmed and see to calculate, initiate, that first one is a very typical thing you would find in a resume. Initiated interdisciplinary multi-site collaboration, led team in creation and implementation of new, I never see that. Unless I will look at someone's resume and go, it looks like you've spent the last 5 years working in a corner of the lab by yourself. Is that true? Oh, no. I initiate, but where do I see it? So you need to surface these things. And don't think that the only basis of experience that you can draw from to demonstrate these skills is your research work. And so in this example, here's someone who is part of the postdoc industry exploration program. A program at Berkeley, where I'm not doing science at all, but I'm developing, I'm performing outreach, I'm collaborating. That's where you can surface skills in a concrete way that maybe isn't available to you in your lab on an ongoing basis. So don't feel like the only ammunition you can bring to bear to show these other qualities of your personality, of your temperament, comes solely from the nature of the science work you're doing as a graduate student or postdoc. And ideally, this is how you use that handout. Okay. It's critical to understand the necessity to translate the experience. That is, your audience, since you're moving by definition out of academia into industry, lives in a different realm. They have a different language. So years ago, I worked with a graduate student in mechanical engineering who wanted to go into financial engineering. His research as a Ph.D. student was modeling the turbulence coming off the leading edge of a propeller. So you're a hedge fund manager at Susquehanna, turbulence, but a data set is a data set. Here's my substantive domain as a graduate student. Here's what I would do modeling turbulence in interest rates, exchange rates, whatever. Utilize Monte Carlo simulations programmed in C++ to analyze non-stochastic. That is, what is the language that joins those two substantive domains? Such that I am someone who is not a mechanical engineer, can appreciate and evaluate the level of sophistication, nuance, depth of your skills, in this case, quantitative. If you're someone who's like thinking about moving to science communications, you really love talking about science, you're a great writer, how do you express this? Well, years ago I worked with an English Ph.D. who was trying to get a job as an editor. GSR, what the hell is that? Graduate student researcher, what is that? And so she brought in a resume that said assisted faculty member in the preparation of a manuscript for publication. Factually true, but not terribly revealing. And so working with her, I talked about, okay, where was it published? UC Press. Well, if I'm reading that and I'm at another press, oh, that's a real professional press. They have the same standards and expectations we do. Line edited, copy edited, and indexed. Well, editors know that there's not editing. Editing has its different functions. And when you tell me that you've line edited, copy edited, and indexed, oh, she's already begun. She's not one of them academics. She's kind of one of us. She knows our language. She knows how we speak. Coordinated with production editor. Okay, she understands that her work interfaces with others, collaborated with art director and consultant on, that here's someone who has a sense of the broader scope of the job, and she's actually done critical parts of it in the past. Up until now, most of you who are still graduate students and postdocs have moved forward largely on the basis of your ability to show you're smart and able to learn. You know what? I don't want to hire smart and able to learn. You've kind of done this before, right? Maybe not in the same context, maybe not to the same extent, but show me some analogous experience in my language that helps me understand that the apparent divide, turbulence, propeller, financial engineering, is actually much narrower than I would perceive absent your clarifying that for me. They're not going to do it for you. You need to reach out to them. When you're taking your 4 or 5 page CV and condensing it down to a couple of pages, the temptation is to throw everything in there. And I see these resumes that go top to bottom, sideline to sideline, and 10-point, and I pick it up and my shoulders go like this. No one wants to read a document. And so what I suggest to you is if there are 50 things potentially of value to the employer about you, don't give them all 50, because at most they're going to take in half of them, if that. But rather take that 50, go through it and figure out which are the ones that don't really speak to the job, pull them out, and that allows for the most valuable space on a real estate, on a resume, which is white space. People, you know how faculty complain how students don't read? No one wants to read. Your goal is a document which is glanceable, which means in practical terms, if I pick up your resume without my glasses while I'm on the phone, am I going to see the things that I care about? So if you give me a resume where your education looks like this, where exactly did you get your degree, it's all kind of condensed together, as opposed to something that looks like this, I might not even engage it because I'm too busy, I have too many other things to do. So focus on content, on finding language that speaks and conveys what you have effectively, whether it's in protein purification or microscopy, or especially in the Bay Area, we got a lot of small companies, startups. Maybe you were part of a patent process in your lab. Well, you know, a lot of companies at the small incubator stage, they can't afford to have an in-house intellectual property function. So knowing that you're a scientist who has some familiarity with the intellectual process of getting a patent, that's really valuable to us. Because now we know with someone who's familiar with it, we can interface them with our attorneys when we need to. So make sure you're giving everything that is relevant to their needs and in a language that they can understand. Appearance matters. People have very short attention spans, and glanceable documents are much more likely to get the focus and attention that they deserve. So your CV to resume. Your CV is a broad document. It really is sort of everything you've done as a scientist, as an academic. Your resume, however, is a targeted, focused instrument. If you're applying for 3 kinds of jobs, a staff scientist, a project manager, a data scientist, you're going to have 3 different resumes because those audience have different A, Bs, and Cs, and you need to speak to that. Your resume reflects the job description. Those of you who are graduate students and postdocs, hopefully you will not be applying for jobs as graduate students or postdocs. What that means is if you just tell me the things that you currently do, okay, she'd make a great grad student. Don't just tell me what you've done, but help me project you into the role for which I would hire you. That is, how do your skills doing A and B, how do they translate into what I need to have done? Because I'm not likely to make that projection on your behalf. An effective resume is one which is concise, emphasizing concrete experience. Don't say trained undergrads. Trained and mentored 3 undergrads, 2 of whom were subsequently accepted into graduate programs. That is, show, approach, challenge, result, was successful. And I want to end with 2 numbers. Anyone know what 30,000 is? I was on a panel last year with a woman who was an HR screener for a major biotech at Berkeley, rather in the Bay Area. She and 2 colleagues were tasked with reviewing every single Ph.D. level resume that came into the company. In a single year, 30,000. And I'm sitting in the audience, I go 30,000 divided by about 45 weeks, divided by, that's over 125 resumes a day. And of course, reviewing resumes is just this much of their job. They got to write job descriptions, they got to screen, they got to do reference checks, they got to, this is a small part of their job. And the other number that they generated is 3.7 seconds. That is to say, you should expect, when you apply for a job, that first glance at your resume is going to last no more than 3.7 seconds. If you haven't given me enough information to make me willing to invest more time in you, I'm on to the next. So most of your career, most of the time up until now, you have focused on what is the substantive accomplishments that I have generated. What are the skills that I have learned? And it's kind of like Proust in the I know I'm taking a risk with this metaphor, because I'm not sure there are a lot of people who have read Proust in this room. I've heard of him at least. But the idea was for Proust is that this 1,500-page novel is set off because he smells this Madeleine, this kind of cookie that takes him back to his past. It connects. Give me a second. The way it connects is when you look at a line in your resume, developed collaboration to do X, or just solved problem X, you immediately think of all the challenges. I needed to borrow the equipment. I needed to get someone to help me. Then someone needed to explain to me. But in the end, it all worked out. I got a publication. What I get as a reader is utilized advanced flow cytometry to determine the pH of X. I don't get anything of those other aspects of your temperament, your personality, your leadership, your collaboration, unless you tell me. In academia, a CV often doesn't reflect much about collaboration because it actually is perceived to make us look weaker if we admit that she was very instrumental. But when you move out into industry, it's showing the ability to be an effective collaborator, a good team player, that actually strengthens your value and makes you more appealing. So in making this transition from this document you have, a CV, into a resume that works effectively on your behalf, remember that they care about you as a scientist, but it's a rare search that hires the smartest scientist in the pool. They hire the smartest scientist they can get who meets these other critical criteria. And for me to be able to judge you in a positive fashion on those criteria of leadership, collaboration, communication, all those things that the other speakers have talked about, you need to show me and not just tell me. Thank you very much.